Welcome to Software Leaders Uncensored with Steve Taplin.
Welcome to Software Leaders Uncensored, where tech leaders drop the filter and just tell it like it is. I'm your host, Steve Taplin, serial tech entrepreneur who's launched 30 companies, failed at 20 of those, but scaled 10 of those to success. That roller coaster of a ride is the story in my book called Fail Hard, Win Big. And this is where I teach you how to turn failure into your biggest competitive advantage and how custom software played a defining role in every win that I've had. Now I am the CEO of Sonatify Technology. We're a nearshore software development company helping scale existing engineering teams with our talent without the overhead, delays, or drama. Today, I am joined by John Nordmark, CEO and founder of Iterate.ai. And John has been a multi-time CEO, board member, startup advisor, spent some time as a product manager. John has got some good war stories for us. John, welcome.
Thank you, Steve. 30 companies. Oh my gosh.
Yes, at first, this is the story I've always wanted to tell. I was like, do I really want to say that I've failed at 20 of those? And one of my buddies put it in perspective that if you were a Major League Baseball player, you'd have a 333 batting average, and that would get you in the Hall of Fame. And I have found being open about the failures I have had, which many people have a hard time talking about their failures, but you've been a multi-time CEO. You've had exits. Man, you learn more from the failures than you do the wins. I wish it wasn't that way, but that seems to be how it works.
For sure. Like I've been fired a number of times. When I quit my job to start my first company, eBags, it was out of frustration, and just feeling like I would miss a wave, the FOMO thing, maybe fear of missing out. But the failures in the end are the big ones. Like the biggest failure I had was at the beginning of the .com craze, we'd raised $30 million from top tier venture capitalists for my first company, eBags.com, and in around the year 2000, you couldn't raise any money anymore, Steve, and it was they called it the nuclear winter of venture capital. And we were not profitable. We were losing $1 million a month, and we had to do a layoff. And then we laid off 25% of our people. We thought of it like save 75% at the cost of 25. But I'll never forget. Before that, on paper, I had made a lot of money as a pretty young guy on paper, but that was a big learning. It was just paper. Until you have a real sale of a company, it's just paper.
But John,
having to look people in the eyes, though, Steve, when we're laying them off, and knowing they're going to have to go home and tell their wife or their husband and their kids that they just lost their job in a time that's hard to get a new job is like the most draining. It kind of makes you feel like you're a bad human being. And that's where I went from being a young guy to being kind of a failure. And that created a whole new feeling for me in starting a company. And
John, if you would give our listeners a couple-minute overview of the journey of your career. You talked about one of your ventures, eBags, but start from the beginning. And you hit us with a company you had that you raised $30 million for, which is amazing. What were you doing before that? Give us your story.
I went to work at Samsonite Luggage. And that's what led to eBags. But at Samsonite Luggage, what's kind of interesting, I wanted to be a marketing person so bad coming out of college. But I didn't go to the right school. I went to University of Colorado Boulder. It's a good school, but places that I wanted to work didn't seem to want to hire you if you hadn't gone to Northwestern or Stanford or Harvard or, Dartmouth or one of those schools. And so I couldn't get a job. And Samsonite was the company that said, we won't have you be a marketer, but we'll have you you could be a salesman. Well, I was scared to death to be a salesman because, I thought of it as car salesman. But I took the job, ended up having the best boss in the world, learned that most of selling is listening and trying to understand people's real problems and helping them, being a helper, not a salesman. But then I ended up getting into marketing. And because my boss lost his job, I was supposed to be on a rotation. But because my boss lost his job unexpectedly, as a kind of the youngest person in the marketing department, I had to do his job. And after 9 months of doing it, they gave me the second highest job in the marketing department.
Wow.
So I was surrounded by the Harvard, Dartmouth people, but I ended up in this great position. But after 8 years in that, I went out with the CEO of that company. I was kind of running marketing at that point. And there it's channel management and product development. But I asked them, to create a website to liquidate product. And it was 1997 at the time. And the CEO said, after 40 minutes of talking to him, and my second try, he said, John, I have email and I guarantee you no one's ever going to buy a bag through an email. So that's when I quit my job and started eBags. And
Okay.
that became a 10-year journey as a, of tons of learning. Thankfully, I knew the bag business because we had to learn online marketing and all the technology related to, we used to call it building a bit trading, page morphing, something else website, because back then websites were static.
Right.
We had to build it was a trick to be able to create a website that morphed pages. Yeah.
E-commerce websites really started in late 90s and early
Yeah.
2000s before they really started to grow.
Yeah, that's right. And it was a totally different time back then than it is today, even though it's still the wild, wild west. We're in the wild, wild west of AI now. But it's a different environment than it was back then. Big companies didn't really think the web was going to work. And, people were scared to even put a credit card online. Anyway, eBags worked. We went through many, many, many gyrations and changes, good times, bad times, but we survived. And we were considered one of the only retailers to really come through the dot-bomb period of the 2000, 2001 period alive.
The dot bomb.
The dot-bomb. And we had an amazing culture. I think that's what kept us together. When we did the layoff that one day, what was crazy, we laid off 25% of the company. And at noon, we all went to lunch. The people who were laid off and the people who stayed. Yeah, that's what it was like there. We just had an amazing place of people
That says a lot about you as a leader, and you have to make tough decisions, but it sounds like you explained why, and you kept the integrity and the culture intact by doing that.
Yeah, it was amazing. And a lot of us still get together every year or two. But anyway, we went on. We had a couple of companies, big ones that everyone knows, try to buy the company. But it became, when you're part of a fund, and this is why today, the company I have today, we haven't raised venture capital yet. And we're pretty old. So, but when you get big investors involved, you're serving them, and they're all on 10-year time horizons because that's when they owe money back to their limited partners. And also, a lot of times they dictate the strategy to some extent. Once you've raised money, your strategy's laid out. It's go for it. Go for it. $1 billion or bust. It's just very high stress. We were successful within the portfolio. I think that we were part of the portfolios, but it taught me that, in my next company, which is Iterate.ai, we didn't want to raise money or raise as little as possible. We're actually raising now. We have raised, but
John,
but we're doing it differently. Yeah.
I joke you do it long enough, and you figure out how to do it right. And it sounds really glamorous, raising a lot of money for a venture, but the downside is you're creating a new boss for you that is dictating your strategy, and you're losing a lot of the freedom. And I'm often coaching startups and entrepreneurs that you should not only raise capital if absolutely necessary. And, there's definitely trade-offs.
Definitely.
So
once you raise money. What's that, Steve?
How did Iterate.ai come into play?
Well, I have, ever since eBags started, I have always helped anyone who asked me for help. I go to coffee with anybody and talk to them. And because of that, I get recruited into these like accelerators to help people. And it turned out I got recruited into an accelerator in Eastern Europe, in Kiev. And it was by a Russian friend of mine, a great guy, Igor Shoifoy. He's an investor and he's very, very good at it. He's an American, even though he's Russian. He's a professor. He's been at NYU and Berkeley. But in any event, he recruited me to help teach Eastern European entrepreneurs how to build businesses American style. And then once companies graduated from that program, they got a 3-month all-paid trip to Silicon Valley to continue their studies basically there. And it was run by the second wealthiest person in Ukraine. This is back in 2011 through 2013. And
Gotcha.
and my co-founder, so I'm not the founder of the company. I like to say I'm co-founder of Same for eBags. It's a team effort, and without him, I don't know where I'd be. Certainly, Iterate wouldn't be what it is today. But anyway, we met there. And when you're in Ukraine back in 2011, well, I'm sure even worse today. But you know, you don't rent a car. You know, if you're there 4 or 5 days, you sit around and eat with the people that you're working with. And so I became good friends with my co-founder, Brian Sathianathan. He had worked in Apple's secret products. Very, very interesting career. He was, you know, one of the inventors. He's got his name on a patent of the first iPhone. And he can write code, like he's an encryption mathematician expert, you know, who can write really good code too, and think architecturally about businesses and software. But anyway, we met there and decided to start Iterate together, and it was based on this thought that the barrier to starting a company had changed. It had changed from raising capital. I mean, the barrier became not capital but brains. And the reason we thought this was there were so many very smart people over there coming from all over Eastern Europe, Kazakhstan, Russia, Belarus, Moldova, all those countries. And they did not have capital. Like, a lot of them lived at home. They were 30 years old, still living with their mom and dad, but they had, you know, master's degree in engineering from a great school. They just didn't have, you know, their economy doesn't really, it's not American. And so these kids and young people were launching off the Amazon cloud using code libraries to move really fast. Brian and I just thought, you know what, the world's going to change. The tech platforms that are out there today, or at that point, were so different than what they were when eBags started, when, you know, it cost like $5 million to start a startup, a digital one. By 2013, 14, it had dropped to about $5,000 was the estimate. And today it's even crazier. Like, you know, Iterate, we built our own code generation platform that we use internally, and we're starting to offer it to other companies. And you know, it's just mind blowing what you can do as just a couple people. So
Times have definitely evolved there, and some smart technical people with limited resources can get a lot done in current times.
That is the thing. I mean, you know, it's instead of needing 40 people to build something, you may need just a few, and you know, and they're directing the software developer on their computer just with, you know, English language prompts and understanding about architecture.
So John, I want to jump into Iterate AI more, but a quick question for you. When you were telling your story, you started your career at Samsonite, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You had this idea for excess inventory. They said no. You went and created eBags, and then they ended up buying eBags from you, right?
Isn't that the craziest story?
That is so cool.
Yeah, it's the craziest story. You know, the thing is, we had a couple companies try to buy eBags before, and ones that are big tech, like ones you'd recognize. But again, going back to the venture capital story, like, they needed really big, you know, they couldn't take a 10x return. They had to take something a lot higher to make up for problems, you know, in the rest of the portfolio. Remember, they're dealing with the dot bomb just like we are.
Yeah.
But anyway, we turned down companies along the way for, you know, pretty good opportunities that looked like they could be pretty good exits. Certainly for me and our employees. You know, by turning those down, it actually put another like 8-year time horizon on the company. Believe it or not, like we went into one of those troughs. I'm sure you've seen them where companies weren't being bought, and then all of a sudden it heated up again, and Samsonite came around. Another really big company came around, and the craziest thing in the world, the woman who was, and I think she's still president of Samsonite, was my office mate. Not my office mate. Her office was right next to mine at Samsonite. Both of us in marketing. She went on to be the president there. And
funny
I went on
story.
to do my little thing.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right. So Iterate.ai, what problem do you guys solve? Who's your client? Tell us more about what you're doing there.
Yeah, our clients are big enterprise, and we've got a number of beauty clients like Ulta Beauty and Elf Cosmetics or Elf Beauty. We've got banks like MUFG and insurance companies like over in Asia, like Great Eastern Life Insurance. We've got Circle K, you know, in the autumn, kind of like convenience store space, wide variety. And then we work a ton. The last 3 years, ever since language models came out, we started working a ton in the trying to help out infrastructure companies like Intel and Qualcomm and others. So, you know, we worked with NVIDIA too, but like we in the case of those companies, because of the pedigree of some of our developers coming out of Apple's secret products with Brian, They know how to write code right to the chip. And so our company is a full stack AI company. We started out developing products that are more application layer, that would be used by an end user. But when ChatGPT came out and everyone's strategic plan changed overnight in every big company, it seemed, thought we figured out we needed to get good at running AI that's really affordable on any type of chip. And so that's when we started working with Intel and Qualcomm. So we develop in the middle layer of that, we go down to the infrastructure layer and work on runtime, KV cache type projects. But then in the middle layer, we do a lot of customization of language models. Like for Qualcomm, we build a nano model. It's really tiny. It can operate without electricity or web connection on a tiny device that maybe in a mine, it needs to do RAG in a mine or an oil field or a restaurant. And then we can run on AI PCs, again, without need for electricity or a web connection. And this sort of led us into private AI. So we consider ourselves an expert with the enterprise and with private AI on almost any device.
So how do you run AI on a device that doesn't have internet or even electricity?
Well, the device itself has to store the language model. It can't live on the cloud. So it's got to live on the device. And then it's got to be so optimized at the memory and the network connection and the compute layers. Like this is what I mean, writing right into the chip. It's got to be so optimized there that it can create the memory required to do to run a language model and process all the compute within a really small device. And we just have the people that have that talent, to be able to do that.
Amazing.
Yeah. And so that allows people in places like, it could be a school in Ghana, but it could be a miner in Indonesia or something that wants to talk to a device in a mine, and it reads a 400-page document on the device and gives them answers off the device. So the language model also has to be compressed significantly. It's distilling it, pruning it, fine-tuning it, quantizing it. We do all these things to make them work on these tiny devices, and including writing code to the chip level.
Very cool. Well, tell us about some new and exciting projects you guys are working on.
Oh, gosh, new and exciting. Well, what I just told you, that's rolling out now to companies with big brand names. I don't think I can say their names. I don't know, but they're on Qualcomm chips. It's a 6490 chip. That's what they call it. It's in a lot of devices that you'd know the names of them. So we're in the early phases of doing that. We've built Agent One. So Iterate has two platforms. One is Interplay, which is for developers. It's a drag and drop AI platform that has for building, and it also has runtime built into it. So it can deploy in an organization and make language models run fast. But then the second one is called Generate, and that's more for end users. And it's an agent building platform, but it's done with no code. So that I'm not a developer, but a person like me could come in and create an agent. Really, they're more like workflows right now that we're developing them into, have a lot more agentic capabilities, but they're pretty advanced workflows. And
Gotcha. So workflows
so
connecting different systems through APIs and aggregating and analyzing the data.
That's right. Maybe going through, anywhere up to like 50 or even more steps. But one of them is for we like to say we can make what you do today easier, or we can make what was impossible possible today. And so one of the impossibles possible is helping hospitals collect insurance claims that have been denied by insurance companies.
Last time I checked, that's still a huge problem everywhere.
It's a massive problem. And we've got a software an AI, an agent that will do that. It's actually about 5 different ones that help on that front. We are rolling out Generate, which is that agentic AI platform inside hospitals, inside insurance companies, inside banks. And one reason we can do that is we can live, our software can live privately. Like a lot of these companies have no desire to let anything touch the cloud or shared GPUs. It's just risky, they believe it. So our ability to run these language models either behind a firewall or, on a AWS private cloud, where it's not a GPU or a computing server system, is not being accessed by multiple companies is good. And so we do that. We're also working with like Pure Storage, which runs dark boxes. I don't know if you know this, but a lot of big companies have to save data for a long time. Like governments forever, hospitals for like 6 years, finance companies for 7, I think it is. They have to store that data somewhere. It goes into, boxes created by these companies like Pure Storage. And so we've created an AI layer that accesses all that data with English language prompts. And that's rolling out right now. We're really excited about that. And we're doing that with like WWT, I think, Pure Storage and Intel. Yeah, so a lot of opportunity that, a lot of change, and we've got a lot of products rolling out right now.
Well, tell us about your software engineering team that's pulling all this off.
So we have about 100 people. I think there might be 10 business people. Like we've got one salesperson. 90% of the team is engineers. We do have 3 designers because we do a lot of front end work too, where we have to have a good UX. But our engineers are, there are about 20 of them in Silicon Valley, 10 of them, well, not 10, maybe 5 or 6 in Denver, where I live, and then a smattering around LA, Phoenix, the United States. And then the rest are in India and Sri Lanka. We've got, I think, 3 pods of people in both those places, both Sri Lanka and India. And we're pretty good at managing those. So do you see that very often?
Well, so how do you make it work with your teams in U.S. time zones and your teams that are offshore?
I think, so my old company, eBags, they didn't work that well with the offshore as much. We had good offshore customer care and they were good at it, but we never got the software development working that way. At Iterate, it's been different. We've made it work. And I think one of the reasons is most of our team is immigrants. I mean, this is just my opinion because I'm not really sure, but it's their homes. And we have a lot of people from India, a lot of people from Sri Lanka, and my co-founder is Sri Lankan. And I think they love their people, that they love working in America, but they love their people too and enjoy working with them. They do calls almost every night. We have an online platform where you can see everyone that's working. You can actually see their faces and knock on their doors. And if you come in at like 10 at night, you'll see meetings of 20 people,
What software do you use for that?
It's called Roam. It's new. And it's, I think we were their 700th customer or so.
Spell it. ROA.
ROAM. And it's RO, I think, .am. And it's a really good group of people. It's the people that built Yext early on. And they're very creative and talented at what they do. That's helped us manage a little bit. That's new. We've been doing this for many, many years. It's just we're constantly trying to look for ways to make it easier. And that's one way.
Cool. Good tip. Tip. So, John, you've built multiple companies. You started with a marketing and sales background, and you ended up in tech. I'd love to hear some brutal lessons that you wish you would have learned earlier in your career. As guys like us get older, we have all these stories of what if we could go back and tell our younger selves.
What's funny? One thing that happened, I believe I'm like a team builder. That's like one of my real strengths. And because I never feel like I'm the smartest guy on the team, and in fact, in my company here, I feel like I'm on the lower rung somewhere. And what I mean by that is like technical talent and everything. I can't do what they do. And because of that, I admire them, and I'm curious, and I love asking questions. And all the way back to college, I always lived with engineers, and I don't know why. They were all aerospace, electrical, chemical, the whole group. But now I work with all engineers, and I did it. We had a lot of them at eBags too. And so, but I think because I don't know what I'm doing, I ask tons of questions. And so going all the way back to eBags, when I quit my job and we were trying to figure out how to build it, I had a couple big firms tell me that we had to use, these packages that cost over $2 million each. There was no way I could even pay for it because we had to pay for it out of our bank accounts, me and my co-founders. And then, we found what we called cowboy engineers that were building with Cold Fusion. And they gave us a quote that they could do it for like $500,000 or six. I think it was 500. And we could actually afford that out of our bank accounts. But to vet it, I went to a Cold Fusion conference and just asked probably, I'd stand in the halls and talk to 20, 30 different developers asking, can this scale? Because all these big companies are telling me it'll never work. And a bunch of these guys told me, yeah, you can do it. You just need good developers, and lo and behold, we pulled the trigger, spent all our savings on that, and it worked. But part of the reason was we had great developers. We were able to hire good early on, and again, I think that's maybe a bit of a skill. I don't get it right all the time for sure, but I've got it right a lot more than I've got it wrong. And because of that, it's worked out with eBags, and it's working here at Iterate too, at least so far. Knock on wood with the crazy changing AI market, the speed it's going.
So, John, you've been building teams for a couple decades now.
Yeah.
What's changed most about engineers you hire now versus 10 years ago?
Well, with eBags, even there, you had to hire people that had done stuff that they'd never done before. Like I said earlier, no one had built a bit trading, page morphing website. Data dipping, I think that was the third thing we said, website. And so you have to, whether it was last time or this time, you have to hire people that are willing to work in the unknown space and experiment in it. So you need people that are just really highly curious and hardworking and able to work in a bit of an uncertainty. So those are the same. I would say though, in the new world, it's changed. It's changing quite a bit because of all the AI automation that's coming in. And like I said, with our company, we got to develop right to the, we go all the way to the chip level, and we have to fine tune our language models. And not every company needs to do that. I know that, but that's what our company has to do to live in the enterprise space. And we didn't have to do anything like that at eBags. That said, we did a lot of crazy stuff. Like at eBags, we invented ratings and reviews. We were one of 5 companies doing that up until 2006 when SaaS came out. We did dropship, which was crazy at the time. No one else did that really. And, so we invented all that. I guess there are a lot more common threads than just similar.
Gotcha. Well, John, thank you for getting uncensored with us today. You seem like one of those rare leaders who knows how to tell good stories, knows how to put together the right teams, and rallies the team together to execute and get it done. So it sounds like you're doing that over and over again. So thank you for sharing your story. Before we wrap, John, what's some no BS advice you have for tech leaders out there who are trying to build, scale, or even just survive in these interesting times?
Gosh, remain adaptable, learn. I think we've never been in a time where you have to learn at the rate you have to learn today. It never ends. So I'd say learn, adapt, and surround yourself with great people, and listen to them. And then work hard. That's it.
Awesome
Pretty simple,
advice.
isn't it?
Thank you, John. Appreciate you sharing these lessons. That's it for this episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. I'm Steve Taplin. If you enjoyed the show, go ahead and hit subscribe. If you didn't like it, well, do the right thing. Share it with your competitors. It might be the edge that they've been looking for. Remember to fail hard, win big, and always build what matters. See you next time.
That's a wrap. Another great episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. Thank you guys so much for listening. I really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun doing this show. I love talking with great tech leaders. As a side note, if you're interested, check out my new book, Fail Hard, Win Big. This is the story of how I built 30 companies, failed on 20, and turned 10 into multi-million-dollar wins. The common thread with all of them was custom software. Also, if you need software development help out there, my company, Sonatify Technology, we deliver world-class software development engineers out of Latin America. We have a solid track record of helping companies launch better products and faster. Thanks again for listening. Appreciate it and appreciate you.